Hello, welcome back everyone. It is now the end of October of 2022 essentially, and as we are just one day out from the official release of Tales of the Jedi, a lot of Star Wars fans are really also looking forward to other shows out there like Mando Season 3, the Ahsoka Tano series for next year, as well as a handful of other projects on the horizon by George, John, and Dave. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars updates. Also, by the way guys, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you also very much for the kind support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, one thing about the new universe between George, John, and Dave is that not only are they heavily invested in over a dozen Star Wars projects, let's just be honest about that, they have a lot of work on their end of things and are really trying to turn things around for the franchise as fast as they can. Basically, their overall end game is to regain the lost fans that walked away from this franchise after the sequel trilogy came to a close, and after what happened to, of course, actress Gina Carano and everything that happened in between. So that brings us to where we are right now, and exactly what's going on with John and Dave. Now, Jon Favreau, what I like about him so far, especially as of late, is how talkative he's really been about his goals, about his ambition, about everything related to his mission in the Star Wars world, of really dedicating it to the fans and keeping it up with the fans. And at the end of the day, that's all what the fandom and the community has been asking for, was for creators to just pay attention to the overall philosophy of Star Wars, what it truly stands for, George Lucas's vision, and a whole lot more on top of that too. Now, this is where things really begin to pick up, and how it does involve Favreau teasing something very specific. Now, with many new Star Wars TV series in the works under Favreau and Filoni, they are also prepared to make some big announcements next year that will take fans by surprise. Now, it's noted, however, that just recently Favreau engaged in an interview where he was able to make a big tease about an upcoming project for the Star Wars fans. Favreau went on to state the following to the fanbase: "When you look at the characters in what many, of course, like to call the Mandoverse, it took us quite some time, quite frankly, to finally realize that there is so much for us to pull from these characters in other formats. Myself and Dave, along with those over at Disney, have been discussing ways we could perhaps expand these characters outside of the streaming stage, and how we can find ways to inserting these characters into the form of feature films, to really reach a different type of audience that tends to enjoy movies specifically. It's something that we have been talking about now for the past several months, and how we can bring the Mandoverse to a whole new format, and how we can expand those characters' lives in ways you would never even imagine." Now, let me just pause here quickly for 1 second before I get to the next piece. Now, this all connects to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago of how Disney is essentially kickstarting a new sequel trilogy, alright? Not that they're necessarily making a new 7, 8, and 9 by name, but that they're making 3 movies that take place after the Return of the Jedi film, that's going to be done in the form of a trilogy that will debut on Disney+. Not in theaters, unfortunately, so far. That's what Disney is set on, to making Disney+ movies, but high-budget ones that are very movie-like, great cinematography, but this time around, it's going to be all about the Mandoverse characters. There are some Disney executives, believe it or not, that are fighting to get this done and put into theaters in, of course, the near future, after Ahsoka, Mando 3, and Mando 4 is all pretty much wrapped up, is when they want to begin making these movies, essentially. Now, do I think that this being done in the form of a trilogy is a great idea? Yes, I do. I think it's a great way to redo a sequel trilogy in a sense, where you can kind of just insert new characters that fans actually like, and this is exactly what they're doing. Basically, these films would include characters like Ahsoka, Thrawn, Boba Fett, Luke Skywalker, Grogu, Din, and a whole lot more coming into the equation. That's just for starters. So Favreau really teasing something big here, about these big conversations about expanding the Mandoverse characters. I like how he kind of referenced that, by the way, how he pretty much says it out loud that, you know, fans call it the Mandoverse. But that's basically what he's telling us, is that there are a lot of conversations happening right now of expanding those characters in the Mandoverse into the form of a trilogy of films, into multiple movies, so to speak. And this really is quite something. I don't know why Disney did not think about this earlier on. It's something that we'll get into in just a second, that Favreau actually pitched to Disney, and that was a little bit more involved. We'll get into that right now, actually. But this is something that myself and Dave, he says, had pitched to Disney before we even signed on to The Mandalorian, and what they told us was to wait a couple of years and experiment with the shows before we could take those concepts seriously. And yet here we are today. Apart from what Favreau stated, this all alludes to Disney's new plan to creating a new sequel trilogy of movies that will feature all the Mandoverse characters, and essentially, it will be Legends in live-action form for the very first time in the format of films. Once the ratings for Ahsoka, Mando 3, Mando 4 come into play, this plan is set to move ahead at a rapid rate by Disney executives. Now again, as I said before, there's a lot of debating right now between different executives over at Disney on whether or not these films deserve to go into theaters or just stick it on Disney+. Guys, to tell you the truth, I think this would be a very better situation if they just put these movies into actual theaters. Not only would it reach the common moviegoer that aren't necessarily quote-unquote Star Wars fans, that would make them new fans as well with great content, but it would also allow the fans to come together physically. Actually seeing people react to these movies, hearing these people react to these movies, it's really the magic of it all. And I think that's the one thing missing out of Star Wars right now, is that event, feeling and excitement. You know, you guys remember, even with the sequels, as much criticism as they got, there was that excitement level of just going ahead and seeing this movie with a ton of people and seeing their reactions. It's an event. It truly is a world event. So that's why I always like to differentiate Star Wars from Marvel. Star Wars has something very special about it when it comes into theaters. It's very event heavy because of the magic that is behind it. Now, when you look at George Lucas, alright, given that he is supervising a lot of things right now with John and Dave, helping them out, and how he recently signed on to a big deal, we'll talk about that too. We actually discussed this just yesterday, about how he is in the process of signing a deal with Disney that's going to allow him to be a co-writer on multiple upcoming shows and/or films. Now, obviously, he's not going to be a main writer, he's just going to be strictly a co-writer, which makes a lot of sense. George, you know, pretty much openly stated, even in the interview from, I think, 2014 it was, that, you know, that's one of the main reasons why he didn't want to make 7 through 9, is because he's getting up there in age, he wants to spend more time with his family, make his own movies, and stuff around those lines. So, anyways, I would like to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Night to move.